my first rowing experience, I remember my father, who was a very famous sportsman, he took me around to different clubs. And I remember my first experience was in Mossman Bay, when Mossman Rowing Club used to be in the bay only. And there was a fella there, Jack McFarland, who took a whole lot of kids out. He was a very snowy-haired man. He's probably my age now, I suppose. And he took us out in a timber boat, which was more like a rubber snake than any rigid boats that we have now. However, I'd almost forgotten that. The next rowing experience that I had was actually at school, and one of my mates that I'd made friends with at this new school that I'd gone to, and I was hiding away trying to avoid cricket, and the school sent me swimming at first, and I wasn't very good at swimming, and I hated cricket. And this fellow came up to me and said, "Why aren't you doing rowing?" And I said, "Why particularly rowing?" And he said, "Well, don't you know your father, he's a representative." And while I knew my father was a very good sportsman, I hadn't really soaked in the fact that he was a representative in rowing. And so I sort of expressed some, "Oh, right, is that right?" sort of thing. And he found that quite incredulous, that I'd had no knowledge, or not enough knowledge, of my father's prowess. However, I went rowing then as a consequence, and obviously loved the sport. It was great. I wasn't immediately very good at it. The school cruise that I was in, it was several years before I won a race. So, but I still just loved the sport. It was just great fun, and of course then I started winning races, and it became even more fun. I at first was at Mossman Rowing Club for about 2 or 3 seasons. Spent time, but was never a member at North Shore Rowing Club. Spent a lot of time there, and then went to Sydney Rowing Club. Stayed for about 13 seasons at Sydney Rowing Club, where most of my better rowing was done. Then from there I went to Haberfield for the reasons of character clash, if you like, with the people that were at Sydney. So felt that I should move on, and from Haberfield I went to Drummoyne, because the coach was a professional coach there, Rusty Robinson, and the squad was a very good squad, and Drummoyne was on those few years there was the #1 club in Australia in terms of the results. From Drummoyne, they got into financial strife and had to tighten their belt by not having a professional coach there anymore. And I was, as a matter of some sort of principle, thought that I'd gone to Drummoyne for the professional rowing coach, so therefore I should sort of make a comment, if you like, about not staying at Drummoyne because they didn't have a professional rowing coach. So the only other club that was around that had a professional rowing coach at the time, that I hadn't already been a member of all these clubs, was Glebe Rowing Club. So Milan Parker was here in semi-professional capacity. I don't know that Glebe was paying him all that much, but he was a professional coach, if you like. So Terry Davis and I came from Drummoyne and came to Glebe Rowing Club in, I think you said it was 81. So as the time went on, I've stayed on. Basically, I'm always been a rower as such, and rather than a Sydney or Haberfield or Drummoyne or even Glebe as a sort of as an identity, I'd rather classify myself as a rower. Rather than a absolute club person. And to that end, I spent a lot of time still at Drummoyne, coaching there with their group. That came about mostly because of the demise of our club when it failed, financially failed. We were a whole group of girls and boys who were without a home then. We'd lost everything, lock, stock and barrel. And so we dispersed basically. Most of us went to Drummoyne. They gave us a home there for a short period of time, trying to allow us to get back on our feet. That never happened at that stage, and bit by bit all of our membership dwindled away to the other clubs until I was left on my own. The one and only Glebe shirt that was around. So I basically stayed with the Glebe shirt, just trying to keep the length of our existence going without stop. So, which in the long run actually happened. So, Glebe Rowing Club never actually died as such, even though we were much diminished, as I say, to the power of one. It's probably not true to say the one card, because while there was only me on the water, there was quite a deal of support off the water to me to allow me to continue. The biggest support was from our own members, the older guys, but also a lot of support from the other member clubs from the association, more predominantly Drummoyne initially, which is one of the reasons why Robin and I still put in time there. And Leichhardt then after that, I rode with Leichhardt for, I don't know, a decade or more as Glebe only, always in composite crews, and they allowed me that luxury. Mostly Barry Moynihan, who was the president at the time, was sympathetic to the cause, if you like, so that another member club wouldn't die. When we started coming then back to making an establishment of our own, we got good support from member clubs in terms of, I suppose, their bric-a-brac, but which was allowed us to actually get ourselves a fleet together. There was lots of good support from the clubs then. Once again, Leichhardt, Drummoyne, but the schools as well. They gave us stuff which was surfeit to their needs. I mean, St Ignatius gave us an 8, which was just lying on the side of the, just rotting basically. But they just said, you can have it. Things like that. St Ignatius, Newington, St George Rowing Club gave us masses of stuff. Single sculls and riggers and seats and spare parts, and Ray Brown was, and he's gone now too, he was predominantly the force behind that. So we survived and re-established as a consequence. And not only that support, but not mentioning names, but there's one lady came down to us and gave us $30,000 through that period. She was not a rower. She's much affiliated with the club, so I don't know that she'd want me to identify her. But anyways, it was that $30,000 back then. I suppose you could make that probably triple or at least a lot more than what it sounds. And that was given to us under the proviso that it was not to pay off any debt that we had obviously given over to the what turned out to be Sydney University Women's Sports Union. They bought the club's debt out, lock, stock and barrel, and gave the creditors X amount of cents in the dollars to establish themselves there in our old shed. So with that support, that sort of 30,000 there, and then we made ourselves a charity. Max Solling was able to do lots of cunning manoeuvres to allow us to be a charity, and then we got money from Fairfax, we got money from councils, Leichhardt. I don't know if Sydney's council gave us any money exactly, but Leichhardt certainly gave us tens of thousands of dollars. Over and above all of that was Mick Kelly, who gave substantial amounts of money. So and then not only the money side of things, you had support in a whole lot of other ways. Peter Wagner, for example, basically rebuilt the club of his own volition, basically. with the money that he had from those donors, but also he put, I imagine, money in as well, but certainly time and effort. He basically dedicated himself to the rebuilding, the literal rebuilding of this shed. Then, of course, along with those particular guys and girls who made it all happen, we had a whole lot of just member support, because we were starting to build up numbers of actual rowers kept coming back then, and we were able then to a lot of volunteer labour on this rebuilding. As, people painted and swept and brought stuff in and generally supported the actual building, labouring type work, stuff like that. So there was hundreds of, possibly even thousands of volunteer labour poured into the place. Those older guys who were part of the demise, those, for example, the last committee members and those guys, because they were bereft at the loss of the club. They deeply felt responsibility for authorising the demise of the place. So there was their support was evident in terms of we must try and get it going again. So that sort of spirit was everywhere. And although eventually I got down only to one actual active member, there was lots of activity outside of the water side of things. There was not only the club support, but the association support and the support of the community. We had, as I say, people coming to us and offering us stuff, free concrete, for example, that sort of thing. So the industry around the place was also aware of our plight and willing to help if they could. So with all that tied together through Peter Wagner mostly, was able to get it all up and running again. Yeah, that, as I say, with a lot of community support and a lot of other clubs, we initially didn't have a pontoon and deck, and we were still struggling with membership. It wasn't easy to sell our sport with having to wade into the mud. So a few of the more Spartan of us did so, but basically we didn't have a big membership. Then, of course, there was some ex-members and probably some current members who were in the maritime offices, and they found the monies that was always there and had been hidden from us basically by, whether intentionally or otherwise, the pontoon that was always on the books, as I knew, because I'd seen it there 30 years before. When I said to certain officials, "Where is that money?" they said, "No, nothing about it." And anyway, time passes, and then we have some people who are actually club members who are actually in the maritime working, and they found all these monies that was always there. And so here we have now pontoon and deck all built, public access of course, but it's there. The consequence of that, of course, is the huge influx of members, because it's now nice and easy to boat, and it's very inviting to go for a row. So now we have membership, and now we are healthy. And it's very simply the pontoon and deck that has done that. So we have a healthy membership. We have financial backing through Brad Smith. He's organised these Learn to Rows. We have an income as such, and we sell our own sport, which is better than trying to do chicken raffles or trivia quizzes and trying to make money. We actually do what we're good at, which is rowing, and we sell our sport and generate an income from it, which is obviously the way to go. And when you think of it, we think back to those times when we were struggling and losing our club, how simple it would have been just to say we'll close upstairs and we'll generate an income from selling our sport, and what we should have done. And we'd still be in the old shed if we'd have been so, and we would have worked our way out of debt. We get to a stage now where all the cards are basically in our favour. That one jack that was left is now a full pack.